Hello, my name is Tony. Here we have a lively little blast of Brit sleaze from the late 80s. A time when London's Soho was still a skewed neon hotbed of pornography and vice of the most sordid stripe imaginable. Or so we're led to believe. This is where the terminally degenerate and depraved can purchase sex with a trafficked 12-year-old girl drugged out of her brain. A world of XXX movie theatres, strip joints, jazz mag vendors, sex shops and prostitutes of all genders and types, catering for all tastes. This is not the Euro-sanitized Amsterdam business model. This is the sharpest and seediest end of a seething pond of sexual corruption and debauchery. Tank Malling, also known as Beyond Soho, is an independent exploitation movie with a baked-in British flavour. It's the only directorial and writing screen credit attributed to James Marcus, a peripheral TV and movie bit part actor. The soundtrack is a collaboration by two rock music luminaries, Rick Fenn, guitarist with 10cc, and Nick Mason, Pink Floyd's drummer. It stars Ray Winstone, Scum, Sexy Beast, Amanda Donahoe, ex-girlfriend of Adamant and winner of a Golden Globe for her role in LA Law, Jason Connery, son of Sir Sean, may rest in godlike peace, and Marsha Hunt, ex-Mick Jagger Squeeze and reputed to be the inspiration for the Stones' classic song Brown Sugar. Turning up in his last role of any note is Peter Wyngarde. Wyngarde was once the love idol of thousands of women due to his role as mustachioed, cravat-wearing crime fighter and novelist Jason King in the ITC TV series Department S. This ran from 1969 to 1971, after which, so popular was he and the character, he was given his own series, Jason King, there's a surprise, which lasted until the end of 1972. To add that extra vibe of salacious sleaze to Tank Malling, Wyngarde's career nosedived spectacularly in 1975 when he did a proto-George Michael. He ended up pleading guilty to a charge of gross indecency with a crane driver in the public bogs of Gloucester bus station. Classy. Listen, they're called public toilets for a reason. They're for public use. There's a fucking clue to the likely outcome right there. You might get seen and recognised. Making any sense? What's wrong with hotels or motels or caravans or motorhomes? What is it about the fetid, stained porcelain stink of shit and piss that fuels the appeal of such liaisons in such unsanitary venues? Answers on a sheet of Izal arse wipe, please. Heavy duties are taken on by Glenn Murphy, who later went on to star in the long-running TV series London's Burning, and former WBC light heavyweight boxing champion John Conte. He was on the front cover of Band on the Run, you know. On release, it received a massively hostile critical reaction, suffered from patchy distribution and negligible positive publicity, generated mass public avoidance, so it sloped off quickly into the home entertainment market, VHS and later DVD, and there it died a lonely death. There ain't no Blu-ray here, and the best quality you'll get to see is as poorly mastered VHS shovelware onto a silver platter of digital versatile disc. It's scarce but can be found, but only if you look for it. Which is a stupid fucking thing to say, I just realised. What I mean is, oh, never mind. All this adds up to something I was going to be driven to get my hands on. I saw it first as a VHS rental, then picked up the DVD later. Not that there's anything remotely resembling visual upscaling going on whatever the format. Everything about it indicated it was going to be my type of thing. So was it? Yes, indeed it was, and certainly remains so to this day. I'll apologise now for the quality of the images in this video because the source material is seriously lousy, grainy, grimy and scratchy. Sounds like a firm of solicitors from medieval times. Or last week, should you hail from Blackwood. I know you may be thinking I'm making excuses because I'm a technical dunce, but what I've got is what I work with, and no one can prove otherwise. Tank Malling kicks off with a murky black and white intro tracking the journey of a 12-year-old girl as she gets off a train in London. Presumably a runaway, she's lost and out of her depth in the crowd's constant motion and jostling clamour of the big city streets. Things bleed to colour, but to be honest, it's all very muted and grey, so there's not a lot of difference, and a well-dressed and seemingly kindly man approaches her and offers a helping hand. This isn't going to end well. John Tank Malling, Ray Winstone, is a disgraced former investigative journalist who's just finished serving a 2-year stretch for perjury. He's been reduced to photographing Z-list celebs at horse racing events and keeping an ear open for any gossip he might leverage a story from. He is approached by Helen's Searle, Amanda Donahoe, who begs him for his help. Tank responds with, and I don't know if I'm sensing it right here, a little bit of mild reluctance, if not faint hostility. Fuck up! Yes, I think that is the case. Helen, an ex-junkie prostitute, persists, and it's clear the two have history. Seems that Tank, prompted by Helen, tried to take down politician Sir Robert Knights for the sexual abuse and murder of a 12-year-old girl who had been trafficked into prostitution and drug addiction. Things didn't go well. Helen hung Tank out to dry, and after an attempt on his life, which left him with scars from a failed throat slashing by Knight's hired goons, spent some time languishing at Her Majesty's pleasure. Understandably, he's a little bit wary. Knights is the political leader of the Moral Revival campaign, a right-wing collective hankering after the good old days and standards of Queen Victoria. It's a front for a cabal of high-ranking police officials, judges, MPs and businessmen, up to their necks in corruption and obscene sexual perversion, sadism and murder. Knight, who it transpires is quite insane by the way, aims to be the next British Prime Minister. Now going on recent form in the UK, he seems an almost viable choice by today's standards. And so Helen drags Tank back into the crusade to expose Knights. She's in fear for her life as prostitutes in Soho are being butchered by a killer dubbed by the press the Soho Ripper. It's actually two thugs, Cashman, Glenn Murphy and Albert, John Conte, knocking off potential witnesses on the orders of Dunboyne, Jason Connery, Knight's personal assistant. Victims of the Moral Revival Party are being silenced. For safety, Tank takes Helen back to the apartment of his current partner, Selina Marsha Hunt, where he records her evidence and eyewitness experiences of Knight's depravity. She implicates him directly in the death of the 12-year-old girl. She tells Tank that Knight keeps a diary with details of the crimes of the Moral Revival locked in a safe at his manor house. Tank enlists the help of his friend and professional thief Danny, Jamie Foreman, to break in and steal the diary. Unbeknown to them, Dunboyne watches their activities on CCTV. When Danny gets home with a diamond necklace he has surreptitiously nicked from the safe, Cashman is waiting for him in the shadows. Back at Selina's apartment, whilst Helen sleeps in a drunken stupor on the couch and Tank and Selina get it on in the shower, Cashman and Albert break in. Helen gets a pillow over the face and several bullets to the head, Selina is shot dead in the shower, and Tank is knocked unconscious and abducted. In a disused lockup, Dunboyne confronts Tank and explains how he is going to be framed for robbery and the murders of Helen, Selina and Danny. Then, unable to cope with his grief, how he will commit suicide, but not really because it's Cashman and Albert who will have done him in. Before he leaves him to his fate, Dunboyne partially cuts the rope around Tank's wrists and slips an automatic pistol into his pocket. In a brutal fight, Tank beats Albert to death and slashes Cashman's face and throat with a switchblade. Battered and bruised, Tank makes his way to a press conference when Knights is speaking to the media. From the audience, he asks Knights if he believes in the death penalty. When Knights responds with a rapturous yes, Tank blows his brains out. The film ends with Dunboyne on the phone in his car talking to an unspecified person and informing them that things have worked out as planned. He ends the call and laughs like a drain on legs. Something's tickled his ring pull. When it comes to exploitation or grindhouse cinema, Britain is less prolific than the US and less eclectic and inventive. There is no real equivalent of a Roger Corman figure, the closest being someone like the late Pete Walker, whose sexually charged horror flicks like House of Whipcord and Frightmare pushed the censorship envelope. Occasionally though, something like Tank Malling comes along and you consider the differences. Tank Malling is a nasty piece of work. It takes a sensationalist approach to the subjects of perversion, sex and sexual violence and turns them into a grueling mixdown of unashamedly spiteful and graphic unpleasantness. It's a pulverizing sledgehammer rather than a delicate scalpel. It's neither well directed, scripted nor shot, but it does have a certain raw power surging through it, a sort of dirty electrical charge that makes it a quite distinct experience. The acting across the board Ford is loud, exaggerated and telegraphed, with an overemphasis on shouting and raving to convey emotion. No performance has even the slightest passing contact with the notion of subtlety. From a thespian perspective, it's no one's finest hour. Ray Winstone is a compelling screen presence whatever he's in, but even he is little more than an in-your-face mass of cockney bluster and blaring. There is no comparison between this and his later work on something more contemplative like Nil by Mouth. Tank Malling is not for the faint-hearted or those of a sensitive disposition. A sex and sadism montage delivers a queasy and grubby interlude. Cashman and Albert's switchblade murder of a prostitute is ferocious enough to make you glad the camera pulls away from the more graphic details. The punishing physical confrontation between Tank and his two would-be murderers is a bloody and bone-crunching affair, personified by gleefully malicious sadism and brutality. Surprisingly, one of the more convincing fight scenes I've ever encountered on film, the damage wrought on flesh and bone conveyed with a stark realism. You may flinch a bit. There is also the doomy failed crusade aspect to consider. There are no heroes or nice guys, just characters with selfish objectives, wishes and desires. Tank wants and is obsessed by revenge and getting his life back. Helen wants to save her own skin. Selina wants Helen gone and Tank to herself. Knights and his corrupt courtiers want power, money and a veneer of respectability to conceal their disgusting activities and appetites. And Dunboyne, the manipulative devil, trickster, puppet master, wants whatever he wants and ultimately gets it at the expense of everyone else. No justice, no redemption, no happy endings. Just like real life in a way. Tank Malling is a prime example of a British exploitation flick that goes out of its way to be as strident, lurid, harsh, brash and tasteless as possible. Down and dirty stuff that starts out in a Soho gutter and by and large stays there for the duration. Like I said, it's a nasty piece of work, and that's exactly what I like about it. Alright, thanks a bunch for your time and attention. If you so wish, mash like, didn't like, turn on notifications, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I'm thinking of producing some exclusive content for subscribers only. I'm wondering what anyone's thoughts might be on that. If you already subscribe, is that something you'd appreciate or even want? Let me know. Meanwhile, bye for now, pilgrims.